So, would love to hear from you what you are grateful for today. Oh yeah, 26 in Cincy. Yes, Michelle. It is chilly. I'm grateful for this fireplace. Even Frankie, my little dog, like can't take it. He won't even go outside. He went potty on the mat this morning out back. He is not even interested in going out whatsoever. Would love to hear what you're grateful for today. Um, I was very just, I was thinking this morning, I'm grateful for the ability to really be able to kind of be in two places that I love. I always get so excited to come to Kentucky, and I love being in Charleston because my family's there and Adam's there. So I love being able to go back and forth. So would love to hear something you guys are grateful for in the chat as well, as we continue with part two of defining greatness. So, last week, if you missed it, you can go back and watch in the group. John has been doing a series on people of greatness, and he says, greatness, you're not born with it, it's determined by the choices that you make. And so, last week, if you missed it, we talked about people of greatness, they think three ways and they prepare three ways. And today we're going to kind of continue on with how they live as well. But people of greatness, they think possibilities, they think win win, and they think abundance, and they prepare continually. Visually and realistically. And so I'm not going to go super into those, but if you missed it, you can go back and watch. But they were really, really great. So today we're going to talk about how they work and how they live. So I really want you to get in the mindset of thinking about like great people that you know, or someone that you would really describe as someone that's great. They possess a greatness. And so they work three ways. And I love this because I don't know if any of you are like this, but I love to work. And I used to think about that as a negative thing. And after kind of going through some of this, I realized it's totally not a negative thing. But the first way that people of greatness work is passionately. And John says, people of greatness agree that there's no fun like work. It's why they don't retire. It's why you'll see a lot of people still working, even though financially they don't need to work anymore. But they think work is fun. With great people, there's very little difference between work and play. And you'll hear sometimes people are like, oh, I have to go to work today. And oh, I can't wait to play. And I think we're all guilty of that in some sense. It depends on what you're doing every day, right? But I love the Warren Buffett quote, I tap dance to work every day, is what Warren Buffett said. And I just think that's so great. I love that. And so John said, ask yourself, how many people do you know who became really, really successful doing something that they hate? And the answer is probably nobody. Because when you're doing something that you hate or that you aren't passionate about, you don't become successful. And the difference is that those who are working with the passion, they do. That's their word. Instead, those without passion, they try. And for any of you who've taken bold, right, there is no try. I used to like cringe when people would say that over, and I'm like, okay, I've heard it 100 times. But the reality is that you can't get people to try. And John kind of told a story where he said, I just stopped getting people to try. I would try to get people to try, and it would never work because they would quit. And he said that the reason is because they found out that life is hard and there's ups and downs, and you have difficult days no matter what your field is in. Even when you are in a passionate role, it's still like a roller coaster, especially for those of you on the Zoom or watching on Facebook who are in real estate. I always say, I swear, I think there's no industry like real estate where you can wake up one morning and you're at the height of heights, and you can get one phone call and you're in the pits of hell in like 30 seconds. It's like it only happens to realtors. I don't know why, but it's so true. But John says, when you say try, you build an automatic excuse in your brain. And I think that's so good. I love that. I like highlighted that over and over when I was writing that down. Because if you think about it, if you say, I'll try to come to your dinner that you're having, well, really, you're already like thinking of excuses. Has anybody else done that? If you're like, oh, well, something might happen or this might happen. But he says, when you say you do, you're going to do something, you commit to finish no matter what. And there's such a big difference between do and try. Passion will make you stand out in a crowd every time, because the unfortunate thing is a lot of people don't have passion. And so John just says, if you can possess that passion, you're going to stand out. You're going to rise to the top of the crowd. because a lot of people, they don't have it. And then lastly, great people do every day what average people don't think is possible. I love this. I've never heard this before, only from John. He says average people eat the dust of great people who are spinning out, moving forward. Because great people they're on it, they're moving forward, they're ready to go, and so average people are like eating their dust. And I just kind of maybe like raise your hand, just like flash it up if you've ever felt like it's a negative thing that you love to work, or that you work too much, or that you're working all the time. I mean, I feel like that sometimes happens with us. And so I love that. So people of greatness, they work passionately. Oops. There we go. And they work smart. Number two, they work smart. And John talks about the law of priorities. I think that's in his 21 Irrefutable Laws book. But he teaches us about 3 R's, and it's required, return, and reward. And he says you need to think about this in everything that you do, especially with your work, because you need to do what's required. You need to get a return, and there has to be a reward. And if you're people of greatness, they won't do it unless they get those 3 things, right? They have to get a, they do what's required of them. I'm going to tell you a story about that later. They have to get a return, and they have to get a reward, right? And so the law of priorities teaches us that activity is not necessarily an accomplishment. Because we do a lot of activities all day long, but you can do a lot of things or activities that might not necessarily move you towards accomplishment. And then the number 3, people of greatness their work goes beyond expectations. And he told a great story I'm going to share with you that I'll kind of just give you the highlights of it. But he says it goes beyond what other people think. Disappointment is the gap between expectations and reality. And the greater that the gap is, the greater the disappointment. So if you think about it, whenever you've been really disappointed, or if you know someone who's disappointed, it's probably because they had an expectation in their mind, and then the reality did not meet what their expectation was. So they were disappointed, right? He says you have 3 different kinds of expectations. You have expectations you place on yourself. You have expectations of others or for others that they're going to do. And then we have expectations of what other people have of us, what their expectations are of us. But the expectations that we have of ourselves, in our own minds, that's really what determines your greatness. And really, they should be higher than the expectations of others. Your expectations of what you do should be higher of what you're expecting somebody else to do, whether it's your partner or your spouse or your people that you work with, whatever that is. And so he told this great story about his dad, Melvin. And I've shared a lot about John's dad because John shares a lot about his dad. And it's one of my favorite things to learn from him. He actually passed away last year on the 4th of July. I think he was not, oh, shoot, I'm blanking. I want to say 97, 96 or 97. Some of you may remember. But he told this story, and he said that it's one of his greatest stories that his dad's ever told him. And he said that Melvin said during the Great Depression, 80% of men were out of work. And I mean, literally, that's 8 out of 10 men did not work. They were at home without a job. And he said, however, John, I had 3 jobs. And John said, well, what do you mean? How'd you have 3 jobs when 80% of men were out of work? And he said, I'll tell you what I did. I went to hardware stores, and he said, I would walk in and say, hey, I know that, you can't afford to pay anybody, but you probably need help. And I'm out of work and I don't have anything to do. And I'm sure not just going to sit around the house all day. So I'm just going to come today, and I just want to work. And so whatever you need done, you don't have to pay me. I'm not going to take your money today. I just want to do whatever I can to help you in whatever you need today. And so he said that he would do that. And then he said at the end of the day, he would say, here's the deal. Sometimes they would say, let me pay you for today. I'll scrape something by. And he would say, no, you don't have to pay me. But whenever you get in the shape of hiring somebody, I'll just ask that you think of me first. And so he said he did that at multiple different hardware stores and a grocery store. And he said within 3 months, he had 3 jobs. So he was actually working at 3 jobs when 80% of people were out of a job. And he said, John says it's because Melvin understood that in scarcity, you have to exceed expectations. And that's what he did. He went in and he exceeded their expectations in a time where everybody was in such scarcity mode because of the depression. And he said, most people want to not work and get paid for it, but he wanted to work and he wanted to meet their expectations. And then the money would come later, right? He wasn't as concerned about that. And he said, when things are going bad, people of greatness step in and they see a need and they make more than others. And so I just think we have unfortunately kind of a lot of bad going on in our world right now. There's a lot of good things, but there's also a lot of bad things. And so that really resonated with me because I was just thinking, man, what could we do as people of greatness to step in and see a need and do more than others and go beyond people's expectations? I love that so much. And then the last part of this was people of greatness, they live three ways. And the first way is they live with humility. He said the first test of a great man is humility, or woman. And I actually, one of the ways that I look to hire people in my world is something that I learned from an author and leader, mentor, Patrick Lencioni. And he has written several books. And one of the books he talks about the the three things that you need to look for in a person, and it's humble, hungry, and smart. And I heard him in real life, in person, speak in San Francisco. And that was when I very first heard about this. And he said the very first thing he ever looks for when he's going to hire somebody is humility. Because if you aren't humble and if you think more of yourself than you think of others, then that's not good, right? A lot of the other things we can work through, but if someone doesn't have humility, it's really hard to work with them for the long term. So he said it doesn't mean when you're humble that you think less of yourself. It means you think of yourself less. So you think of other people before yourself, and we've all heard that, but I think it's a great reminder. And he said people with humility, they laugh at themselves. They have a great sense of humor because everybody else is laughing sometimes at you when you're succeeding or when you're doing things, or maybe you're doing something out of the box. And so he said you have to have a great sense of humor. Humility means knowing and using your strength for the good of others. And all of us have a strength. We all have a unique ability. We all have some sort of passion or something inside of us that we are better at than actually statistics say 10,000 other people. You have something that 10,000 other people don't have around you. And so humble leaders bring out the best in others, and people love to be around them. And if you think about the people that you love to be around, and I see several of you on the Zoom actually today that I love to be around. And it's because you bring out the best in others. You help lead other people to bring out the best in themselves. And so I love that. The second way great people of greatness live is with integrity. And I think we kind of believe that this is a given. However, he said, look at integrity as trustworthiness and like as a trustworthiness bank account, basically, in which you make deposits and withdrawals with others every single day. And so you have this bank account, and maybe I'm just going to use Monica, for example, because I can see you, Monica, and no one else. Hi. But if every single day I were making deposits or withdrawals into your trustworthy account, then we would, and the deposits were more, then I would feel like you had high integrity and you would feel like I had high integrity. And he said, ultimately, at the end of the day, when you see someone and you feel like they don't have high integrity, it's probably because they've taken so many withdrawals from your trustworthy account. And that makes a lot of sense when you think about it that way. And so he said, people of greatness that live with integrity, honesty, and reliability is really important to them. And there are days where we all fall short, right? We all accidentally maybe say something that we shouldn't have said, or we might forget that we were supposed to do something. That doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't a person of integrity. It's just that those withdrawals can't outweigh the deposits, for lack of better words. And then number three, the last way, and I'm going to kind of end with this, is people of greatness, they live generously. And we've talked a lot about this. And I feel like, speaking of mindset and really wanting the focus of this for the last 38 weeks to always be about mindset, is living generously is a mindset. I guess is the best way for me to say it. I mean, you choose to be a generous person. Albert Einstein says a person first starts to live when they can live outside of themselves. And what that means is you have to think about others, more than yourself. So John gave a couple of thoughts, three thoughts really, on generosity. The first one is to be a river, not a reservoir. And he said what that means is you live to give, not to get. And I used to a little bit struggle with this when I started to kind of really make more money than I ever thought that I would make, really, to be honest. And sometimes I think you can feel guilty around that. But John says, it's funny because he said, now don't get me wrong, I like to get, like I'm going to make money. And he said, but the reason is because you have to have money to be generous, or you have to have something to be generous. He said, you can make all the money that you want to make, but what you do with it is what makes a person great. And if you don't make it, you can't give it, right? So it's okay to want to have, it's okay to want to get and to make. It's what you do with it. Because he says the second thing is be generous now. Because if you aren't generous now, you won't be when you have a lot of money or the more money that you start to make. And did anybody ever used to watch that show about people who won the lottery and within like 3 months they were like broker than they were before they won the lottery? I always found that so fascinating to watch those shows. I don't know why. But it's crazy. And really it's because it pulls out money for a lot of us, pulls out what's already inside of us. And so he says, if you're not generous now, you might not be generous later. And he said, selfishness isn't a matter of money, it's an attitude. And you don't get unselfish when you make more money or the more money that you make. If you're selfish, then you just get more greedy, right? It just pulls out what's inside of you. And then the third thing that he said is don't keep score when it comes to being generous. And he said, you've not lived a perfect day unless you've done something for someone who they can never repay you. And and to be honest, I don't know what you guys think about this, but it's kind of hard. I mean, every day I'm like thinking, okay, put somebody in my life that I can do something for that they can never repay me. And some days that doesn't happen. But I just think if we have the mindset and have the attitude of that, and we're actually looking for it, then we'll find it. And John actually talked about, John said, I've made a lot of money. I mean, I've made a lot of money. And he said, but I've given a lot too. And he said, I can tell you in all the years, it feels so much better to give than it does to make or to get that. And it really does. I used to have my leadership teams a couple times a year. We haven't done this in a while, really, because of COVID, but we would go and serve, and we would shut the office down, and the leadership team, the staff would leave for the day, and we would go serve somewhere. We've served food, and we've packed backpacks, and we've done all this other stuff. And at the end of the day, we would leave feeling so much better that we did that than anything else that we could have done. So he said, you need to love to give and be generous, and don't keep score. Just go out and love to live and love to be generous and love to give. And I don't know if generosity, I think it's learned, really. I don't know if it's something that you're born with or if it's a learned behavior. I've talked about that with Linda on our podcast before. But I think even if you maybe wouldn't describe yourself as a generous person, I think it's all about your habits, and you can change your habits in order to be generous, for sure. So this is John's new book, Change Your World. He's actually doing a book tour, and he's going around different cities during COVID. Really cannot believe it, but he is. And so I would encourage you to buy this book. I'm about halfway through with it right now. I started it in the middle of trying to finish another book. I don't know if anybody else does that besides me. Oh, Rochelle. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. Look at that blonde hair. I don't know if you guys can see Rochelle. So, oh my goodness, he is so cute. So I would encourage you to get Change Your World. So John is doing a transformation walk. So I don't know, some of you may have seen me on Instagram walking every single day outside. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to walk in this cold? But I'm going to do it because I committed to it. Or actually, I might have to just go walk on the treadmill. But purchase the book. I think probably I'm going to do some sort of a book club or roundtable on this book in February. So I'll keep you guys posted. But it's not a, John, what does John say? It's not a book, it's a movement. And it's really about how anyone, anywhere can make a difference. No matter what you're doing, you can make a difference. And I think most of you would probably agree that we need like some love and some difference in our world right now. This morning, I was doing my 21 days of prayer and fasting. Pam, I'm sure you were watching it too. And I love that Chris Hodges said that since January 3rd, he hasn't turned on the TV or social media or anything. And sometimes I think, Heather and I've talked about this, sometimes I think it can be a bad thing to live under a rock, and other times it can be a really great thing to live under a rock. And we were Heather and I were texting when all that craziness was happening. And honestly, I didn't even turn it on. And Heather said, I'm about to find a nice cozy spot under your rock that you live under right next to you. I'm like, come on. Because sometimes I think we just have to tune it out and focus on other things. So yes. Oh, good, Amy. I'm so glad to hear that. Yes. So I'll keep you guys posted on that. And then lastly, I just wanted to share one thing with you really quickly. I know many of you have asked about my vision board. So I just wanted to give a little explanation, and I am going to launch this today. and it's like super, super, super cheap, basically just to cover the cost of the stuff that I did to make it and use it. But I don't know if any of you have ever made a vision board. I would love for you to type in the chat if you've ever made a vision board, because I'm going to tell you, if you haven't, I'm going to tell you why you should. But also, if you have, I'm going to share with you really quickly. I would make these boards for like years and put things on these poster boards and like cut things out of magazines, and we would have those groups and do all those things. And ultimately, I never looked at that board, because you can't carry a big board around with you, and you don't put it in your planner or do any of those other things. And so a couple years ago, I started like making it on a template, and I made mine every year on a piece of paper, and I searched things that images and specific things, instead of finding it in a magazine. And really, then I would just put this piece of paper everywhere, on my fridge and in my planner and in my journal and in my Bible and in the mirror in the bathroom, and just on my desk and everywhere around me. And so I've made it to where we can share the template, and you guys can do the same thing. But I know this is hard to see, but I just wanted to share with you a couple of things on stats on vision boards. 67% of people believe that the pictures of their goals will improve their odds, and that they will achieve them. 82% of small business owners that have used a vision board from the get-go of their startup. I'll send you guys this too. We'll post it so you can see it a little bit better. But 82% of small business owners who used a vision board when they started their business, or they started a venture that they wanted to do, accomplished more than half of the things that they've put on their business. And that's a Forbes quote. These are all stats from Forbes. With millennials, the stats are even higher. It's insane. 60% of millennials now use a vision board when establishing a business or a startup. 89% use a vision board when developing a new business plan. Vision boards actually activate your RAS, which is your reticular activating system. Many of you have heard that before. If you haven't, it's the part in your brain. And there's science behind this that I found fascinating as I've been researching it, putting this together. But you're sending those positive vibrations when you have a vision board. Like your RAS is picking up on those things. And then visualization. I read a book by Andy Stanley many years ago called Visioneering that my coach Terry turned me on to. It's a great book, by the way, if any of you are looking for like vision type knowledge. Visioneering is a really, really good book. But the visualizing is one of the actual most powerful mind exercises that you can do. And the law of attraction is forming your life experiences through your every single thought. And actually, when you do this with a partner or with your spouse or with someone that you work with, it actually is 3 times more likely for you to bring those goals into reality. So I just wanted to share that with you. And we'll be sharing this in the Facebook group by the end of the day today. And would love for you guys to take it and participate. And then I'm going to have a mastermind in February on vision boards too. Oh my gosh, my dad's on today. I see you now. Hi. Fun. Okay, that's fun. Anyway, so thank you guys for being on. Go be people of greatness. And I just love seeing you guys. And I'm going to continue to do this throughout the new year, and hope that we can all have a great mindset together. So thank you guys. Have a great rest of your week. See you later.